What if the very thing you believe makes you powerful is the same thing silently undoing your influence? They told you to stand tall, to boast, to make your presence known. They told you confidence was king, but arrogance is the disease that disguises itself as strength. It is not dominance, it is decay. In every court, in every company, in every room where power shifts silently, it is never the loud man who holds the crown. It is the one whose silence commands interpretation, the one whose presence speaks before his words ever arrive. Arrogance, by its nature, announces what should remain concealed. It exposes your desires. It reveals your insecurities dressed as pride. It forces your opponents to see you not as a threat, but as a target. Because a man who must declare his greatness is already at war with the doubt he cannot silence. Machiavelli once wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But arrogance is neither. It breeds neither fear nor love, only resentment. And resentment, like rust, eats through the armor of your influence without sound. History is not built by the men who shout their plans. It is built by the ones who hide them in plain sight. In Florence, in the courts of Rome, in the war rooms of kings, the arrogant man was always the first to be isolated. Not because he lacked intelligence, but because his need to be seen eclipsed his ability to observe. The humble strategist watches. The arrogant actor performs. And in performance, he leaks his position. This is the first fatal miscalculation. In today's world, arrogance is mispackaged as self-belief. But true self-belief requires no audience. It moves in silence. It does not tremble in the absence of applause. Social media has made this disease visible. 1,000 men announcing their success before it is stable. 1,000 more clinging to status symbols like shields, hoping the world forgets they are still untested. But understand this, arrogance is a signal to predators. It tells them you are emotionally vulnerable, that your identity is still dependent on recognition, that you can be manipulated through praise or destroyed through humiliation. It is not power, it is a leash. The modern world rewards arrogance with temporary attention, but attention is not loyalty, and it is never protection. A man intoxicated by his own image becomes fragile, not physically, but strategically, because he is too focused on being seen to see what is coming. Arrogance blinds you to enemies who do not shout, to betrayals that begin with compliments, to shifts that occur in silence while you are still admiring your own reflection. It makes you deaf to whispers and numb to cold stares. It invites war, unprepared. It's in the man who interrupts because he believes his thoughts matter more. It's in the influencer who believes virality equals victory. It's in the leader who surrounds himself with yes men and confuses silence with loyalty. But worst of all, it's in the one who cannot distinguish between self-respect and self-obsession. Power, when it is real, does not speak. It doesn't need to. A lion does not explain itself in the jungle. The mere sound of its footsteps clears the path. But the peacock screams, it dances, it spreads its feathers, and then it is eaten. You must decide who you are, a threat or a display. In war, arrogance loses battles before they begin. It underestimates the enemy. It overestimates its own preparation. It replaces planning with posturing, and the result is always the same: exposure, then collapse. I have seen emperors fall because they believed the echo of their own voice meant approval. I have watched talented minds dismissed because they spoke with certainty but delivered no results. In the eyes of the wise, arrogance is an immediate red flag. It tells us, this man cannot be trusted with information. He will speak before he understands. He will act before he calculates. He is addicted to image, and that addiction makes him volatile. Even in conversation, arrogance is a repellent. You feel it. The subtle overreach, the concealed desperation to appear intelligent, the slight upward tilt of the chin, as if elevation could be feigned through posture. But underneath it, always is fear, because arrogance is fear, dressed in gold. The fear of irrelevance, the fear of being unseen, the fear that maybe, just maybe, they are not as great as they hope others believe. And this fear forces noise. It cannot sit in silence, because silence invites the truth to emerge, and the arrogant man has spent his whole life hiding from it. What makes a man powerful is not the image he projects, but the silence he can hold. When others shout, he listens. When others rush, he waits. When others seek applause, he seeks position. This is not humility for performance. This is control, because the man who doesn't need attention controls those who do. And in that gap between noise and stillness, true power is built. You can always spot the fall before it begins. It starts with overconfidence in public and underpreparedness in private. The arrogant man walks into the room thinking he owns it. But the truly powerful man already redesigned the room before he arrived. This is where the danger begins. Arrogance is not merely an attitude, it is a flaw in perception. It distorts your understanding of the environment. You stop reading the room. You stop noticing the power dynamics, the small shifts, the changes in posture, the eyes that no longer hold respect. You stop detecting the tension that used to inform your timing. You become blind, and in that blindness, you confuse fear for admiration. You confuse tolerance for agreement. You mistake your own reflection for proof of dominance. This is the second fatal miscalculation, because once you can no longer read the field, you've already lost your place on it. Power is not about volume, it is about reading silence. Power is not how many follow you, it's how few can predict you. And arrogance makes you entirely predictable, because everything you do is about proving yourself. Everything you say is a window into your ego. Every move you make reveals your desire to be seen. The strategic man, by contrast, knows the value of uncertainty. He allows others to underestimate him. He allows others to speak first. He allows others to think they're ahead, while he quietly adjusts the terrain beneath them. But the arrogant man, he needs to win visibly. He needs to dominate the room publicly, and so he becomes reactive, easily baited, emotionally hijacked. It only takes one comment, one smirk, one perceived slight, and the mask shatters. Because arrogance is brittle, it cannot take contradiction, it cannot take ambiguity, it cannot stand alone in the dark without applause to keep it upright. And that is when you realize it is not power at all. It is a desperate performance, and the curtain is slipping. Machiavelli understood this better than most. In the corridors of power, the man who speaks least is often the one with the sharpest blade. The man who smiles without answering, he is the one who has already judged the room. He doesn't need to say what he'll do, because he knows you will tell him what you fear. That is how leverage is built. By resisting the urge to impress, by observing before acting, by letting others become drunk on their own noise, while you gather every word like intelligence. When you carry yourself with quiet confidence, others will question what you know. When you carry yourself with arrogance, others will question what you lack. Understand this psychological law. The more you try to prove yourself, the less others trust that you're real. People do not follow those who scream their greatness. They follow those whose presence forces a pause. You've felt it, in a room, in a meeting, on the street. Someone walks in, and everything shifts. They haven't spoken, but the atmosphere changes. Why? Because they do not demand respect. They command it. That is the man others fear. That is the man others want to follow. That is the man others cannot predict, cannot manipulate, cannot reduce to vanity. But arrogance is easy to dismantle, because it is not fortified by truth. It is built on insecurity, and all it takes is pressure in the right place, and the whole performance caves in. This is why rulers fall. This is why alliances break. This is why the most talented are sometimes the most alone. They never learn to separate confidence from arrogance. They never learned that true power grows quietly, that real skill does not announce itself, that dominance is never revealed, it is felt. In chess, the loudest piece on the board is the queen. She moves across great distances. She has range, but it is the pawn, the quietest, that if ignored, becomes a queen. And so it is in life. The man who speaks most of his abilities often has no intention of becoming more. But the one who appears small, who is dismissed, overlooked, underestimated, if he has patience, becomes untouchable. So if you truly seek power, abandon the urge to be impressive, abandon the need to be seen, abandon the impulse to dominate with noise, because the real master plays a longer game, one that does not end with praise, but with positioning. Ask yourself, when you walk into the room, are you performing or are you watching? Are you hunting or are you being hunted? Because the arrogant man thinks he's the predator, but it is the quiet one in the corner, unnoticed and still, who already chose the terrain of battle. There is a reason the most dangerous man in the room is never the one talking. It's always the one you overlooked, the one who made no effort to be recognized, the one who asked no questions, the one who listened, not out of weakness but calculation. Arrogance teaches you to shine, but power is not about light. Power is about shadows. It is about who controls the room when no one is watching, who is remembered after the noise fades, who keeps moving while others are still celebrating their last move. The arrogant man lives for the reaction, the powerful man lives for the result. And this is the great psychological divide. One man is emotionally ruled by external validation, the other is internally ruled by discipline, control, and mission. Arrogance, at its core, is external dependence. It says, I need others to see me so I can feel real. It feeds on praise like oxygen. Without it, the mask slips. The posture softens. The cracks begin to show. You've seen it. A man interrupted in his performance, suddenly lost, confused, dismantled by silence, because his strength was a script, not a state of being. This is the third fatal miscalculation. If you need attention to feel powerful, you are not powerful. You are a hostage, and whoever controls your spotlight controls your self-worth. But the truly dangerous man, he draws no attention until the outcome forces acknowledgement. That's why you must remove every trace of arrogance from your system like poison. It clouds your instincts. It blinds you to the small tells, the real threats, the subtle shifts in human behavior that signal betrayal, disloyalty, or opportunity. It makes you miss the moment before the move. And when you miss the moment, you react too late. A man ruled by arrogance cannot sit in stillness. He cannot disappear into the environment. He cannot gather intelligence because his own noise drowns it out. He is loud when he should be silent. He is visible when he should be still. And he is empty when he should be full of secrets. Every master strategist builds power in layers. Not by showing everything at once, but by withholding, by letting people believe they've seen the full picture, while keeping the final card tucked, untouched. Machiavelli said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does at last, but the arrogant man, he announces his intention, then tries to race it. He calls himself king before he's touched the throne. He confuses confidence with declaration, but confidence doesn't announce itself, it breathes quietly, it waits, it builds tension in the silence between movements, it lets others underestimate it, until underestimation becomes their downfall. There is a kind of silence that makes the room feel colder, heavier. That's not emptiness, that's presence. That's power being held in reserve. Arrogance floods the space, but power compresses, and when it finally releases, it does not ask for applause, it leaves impact. Arrogance shows up to prove something. Power shows up to do something. This is the difference between performance and dominance, and this difference determines who fades and who ascends. So take a moment, consider your own voice, your own habits. Are you speaking to convince or to conceal? Are you appearing strong or becoming strong? Because the moment you stop needing others to believe in your image, you begin to shape your reality. You move differently. You enter rooms like a question, not a statement. You don't reach for respect. You extract it through presence alone. This shift is subtle, but absolute, and it is the beginning of your transformation, because the truly elite do not need to remind the world who they are. They just are, and the world adjusts accordingly. Now we enter the deeper chamber, the psychological forge where true power is formed and arrogance is melted down into discipline. Ask yourself this: what kind of man are you when no one is watching? Not when the camera is on, not when the audience claps, not when you're dressed for the role. Who are you when the room is empty, when the echo of applause fades, when you're left with nothing but your own breath and your own doubt? That is where arrogance dies, or survives, because arrogance is a costume, and costumes fall apart in solitude. But the disciplined man, he sharpens in silence. He becomes more dangerous when the spotlight is off. He does not perform when seen, he prepares when unseen. That's the fourth fatal miscalculation of arrogance. It ties your worth to performance, and anything that must be performed can be faked. Arrogance pretends at strength, but discipline becomes it. And while arrogance obsesses over image, discipline obsesses over leverage. Understand this: the world does not reward those who look powerful. It rewards those who are prepared to strike when it matters most. Arrogance rushes into the room first. Discipline waits behind the curtain, then steps in when the throne is unguarded. The man addicted to arrogance cannot sit still. He is restless, he fidgets, he needs the next opportunity to prove himself. Because without constant reaffirmation his foundation shakes. But the man rooted in strategy, he is unmoved by silence, he is comfortable in stillness, he is terrifyingly calm because he knows he has nothing to prove. You can see it in his eyes. The stillness is real, the focus is pure. There is no desperation to be acknowledged, only the cold, mechanical calculation of the next move. Because he doesn't want credit, he wants control, and control cannot be gained through noise. It is earned through mastery of self. Every minute you spend posturing is a minute your enemy spends planning. Every second you look in the mirror is a second they look at the map. While the arrogant man is convincing the room of his greatness, the disciplined man is dismantling his position, piece by piece, word by word, blind spot by blind spot. And when the collapse begins, the arrogant man will never see it coming, because his eyes were on himself, not the battlefield. You must rewire your hunger. Do not crave attention, crave precision. Do not crave applause, crave information. Do not crave followers, crave leverage. Because the man who moves the pieces behind the curtain never needs to step on the stage. Let others chase fame. Let them trade in noise, trends, validation. You chase timelessness. You chase position. You chase control over self. And the battlefield follows. The most feared leaders in history were not feared because they shouted. They were feared because they were unreadable, because no one could predict what they'd do next, because their silence made men paranoid, because their decisions came from nowhere, swift and irreversible. That is the product of discipline. Arrogance would have announced the move. Discipline waits and strikes without warning. You see, there is no room for arrogance in real warfare. It exposes you. It breaks formation. It opens your flank. A single arrogant gesture can lose a war. A single moment of ego can destroy 10 years of quiet empire building, and that's why you must build restraint into your identity. Not because silence is passive, but because silence is a weapon. Not because humility is weakness, but because humility is a shield that hides your sword. Not because invisibility is retreat, but because it is positioning. Arrogance screams, discipline observes. Arrogance flexes, discipline builds. Arrogance argues, discipline acts. You will know you're becoming powerful when you no longer feel the urge to explain yourself, when you're fine being misunderstood, when you don't need to correct the narrative because you're already reshaping the reality behind it. That is the true mark of a ruler. That is the invisible weight of a man in full control of his presence, his emotions and his battlefield. Not loud, not boastful, not theatrical, just calculated, just dangerous. Let us now step into the moment where the game shifts, where the arrogant fall and the disciplined rise. The moment where noise collapses and power begins to whisper. Arrogance always peaks before the fall. It throws its shoulders back. It laughs louder. It celebrates too early. And in doing so, it forgets that power is not held at the top. It is maintained in the shadows by those who never stop watching, never stop calculating, never stop refining their position even when the battle appears won. This is the predator's hour. This is where the illusion of dominance becomes your greatest vulnerability, because arrogance believes it is untouchable, and so it lets its guard down. The disciplined man, he does not move until that exact moment, until the room is convinced he's no threat, until the celebration begins, until the guards are lowered, the attention drifts, and the mask of invincibility is loosened. Then, and only then, does he strike. That is not cruelty, that is design. You cannot build a legacy if you are too arrogant to delay your gratification. If you are too obsessed with being seen as powerful to become the man who doesn't need to be seen at all, because power is never in the claim, it's in the consequence. Let me speak plainly now. You do not need to speak to be feared. You do not need to dominate the conversation to own the table. You do not need to convince them that you matter if your moves cannot be ignored. The man who cannot be read cannot be stopped. And arrogance is a language that makes you transparent. It reveals your desires, your fears, your thresholds. It makes you obvious, and the obvious man is never dangerous. The dangerous man is the one who gives you nothing, no emotional tell, no reactive outburst, no sudden need to correct or impress or posture, just presence, cold, still, exact. He is the mirror, and when others speak to him, all they see is themselves. This is the fifth fatal miscalculation of arrogance. It removes your mystery, and mystery, more than strength, is what builds myth. It's what creates hesitation in your enemy. It's what makes the world ask, what is he capable of? Arrogance answers that question too soon. Discipline leaves it open and lets them imagine worse than what's real. Do you understand how valuable that is? When your reputation is built not on noise, but on confusion, on contradiction, on controlled ambiguity, some will see you as kind, others as ruthless. Some will underestimate you, others will fear you, but none will know for certain, and that uncertainty becomes your shield. Because people do not strike what they cannot predict. They do not challenge what they cannot read. They retreat, they hesitate, they respect what they cannot explain. You don't need to defend your throne if no one knows where the throne is. This is the quiet positioning of real influence, not a loud declaration of greatness, but the quiet surgical removal of doubt. The man who walks into a room with nothing to prove is the one who ends up owning it. Because power belongs to those who can delay the need to be validated, who can delay the need to be liked, who can delay the need to be loud. You are not here to impress, you are here to outlast. And if you're still clinging to arrogance, if you're still chasing eyes, chasing reactions, chasing confirmation that you matter, then you are still operating in the emotional economy of the weak. The disciplined man has burned all that away. He has walked through that fire and emerged forged, not polished, not praised, not inflated, forged. Now he walks differently, he speaks less, he hears more, and every word that leaves his mouth lands with weight. Because he built power the only way it lasts. Silently, precisely, alone. Arrogance is loud because it fears silence. It brags because it fears irrelevance. It performs because it fears being forgotten. But the man who walks the path of power, true power, has already made peace with being unseen. He knows that control is not found in attention, but in position. And position is built quietly. So if you want to be feared, respected, followed, let go of the need to be impressive. Walk away from the spotlight. Let others post, talk, perform. You disappear into discipline, into structure, into strategy. Because power is not earned in moments of applause. It is forged in years of restraint. The man who can withhold wins. The man who can delay his rise rules longer. The man who does not expose himself to prove his worth becomes a force that cannot be dismissed. You do not have to be loud to be unforgettable. You do not have to be seen to be in control. You do not have to be loved to build your empire. You must become still, deliberate, unreadable, because in this world, the man who speaks last often has the final word. You want to rise, then silence your need for approval. You want to be remembered, then stop trying to be recognized. Let them underestimate you. Let them mock your silence. Let them think they've passed you. And when the moment comes, when they've exhausted their noise and revealed their hand, you move, quiet, precise, final. That's the man they fear. That's the man they can't control. That is who you are becoming. Now, if you've made it this far, it means something in you is shifting. Something inside you has begun to reject the noise, the vanity, the performance. You've started to understand that arrogance doesn't protect you, it exposes you. And that real power begins when you stop needing to be seen. So now I ask you, are you ready to walk away from the crowd? Are you ready to be overlooked, misunderstood, even doubted, in the name of becoming something greater? If this message struck a nerve, if it felt like truth rather than comfort, write this in the comments. I choose discipline. Let's see who among you is ready to build in silence and rise without permission. And don't leave yet. The next video, the one waiting for you, will sharpen you even further. You'll see why soon.